high fidelity. What a way to open the show. That was
And I like being in the
beautiful.
middle for a second.
Wow. You want to be
I
in the
just-
middle?
No, I hate being in the middle. I was a bit. That's why I was.
I'll put you in
that's
the
why I was
big
a
box. You want the
That's
big
why I was
box?
a bass
I'll put you in
player.
the big box.
No,
You
don't do
remember,
that.
No, you don't want the big box? Okay.
remember how much we all hated being in the big box? Welcome, everybody, to Rad Pod and Chill. I'm Heidi Kuda. I'm with Jim Stewartson, High Fidelity. We're super happy to be here with you guys tonight. What a beautiful opener, redeeming ourselves from some of the really terrible openers we've had. If I melt midway through this live stream, it's not my fault. According to my friend who's a meteorologist, I get regular updates. It was around 111 in the Southland today. And I wouldn't know because I did this all day with some air conditioning on. That's all I did. And we also recorded an amazing show. We have highlights from the episode that dropped today. And we also have an upcoming episode that I'm very excited about with our friend Dr. Nafiz Ahmed. So we're just rocking and rolling, kicking it off for fall sweeps. And so I have not painted my nails yet. So I would like very much one of y'all to begin the update and begin the unpacking of the events of yesterday, because more is continually revealed every moment.
Okay. So
You were
the
pointing
reason
at
I
yourself,
opened-
so I'm waiting.
Okay, I'm coming. I'm slow, dude. Anyway, the reason I opened with Amy Winehouse is because I just need to remind our audience.
You don't need an excuse, first of all, for Amy Winehouse.
Okay, well, the reason Amy Winehouse took her life was because of journalists working for Rupert Murdoch were hacking her phones and leaking her personal information. And I personally hold Rupert Murdoch responsible for Amy's demise. And the reason I bring that up is because there's a lot of funny business going on in journalism right now, as we found out. Dimitri Simes is getting arrested. And a lot of people are like, hey, Dimitri Simes. Yeah,
Journalism.
Dimitri Simes is like, oh, hey, he's a Trump guy. No, I would like to remind our audience that Dimitri Simes was Rand Paul's advisor for a decade during the Tea Party years.
No way. You mean Rand
I know,
Paul
crazy, right?
A rooster too?
And then
what happened?
It's
the fake
Kentucky
motherfucking journalist, the fake journalist, podcaster from Occupy Wall Street, all the way back when, Mr. Timothy Poole, gets outed as doing work for Russians. And I find that very interesting because I never listened to Tim Poole. I never cared about who he was or anything. First time I heard his name up close and personal was when it was in an email that got me fired when I was going after Kyle Rittenhouse. So it's kind of crazy that all these things that happened 4 years ago that we've been talking about for the last 4 fucking years are now playing out. So guess what? Our time will come. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, High Fidelity. Go ahead, Jim.
So if anyone is just catching up, there's a shitload of very interesting Russian activity. So let me give you my small anecdote. One of the people who was indicted or not indicted, but was easily identifiable in the document from the DOJ, the affidavit, was a guy named Dave Rubin, who's this sort of right-wing, tries to be kind of, middle of the road, but is really just the same fucking asshat as all the rest of them. That dude, messaged me on Telegram last week, out of the fucking blue. Literally never tweeted about him, never thought about him twice. I was like, yeah, there's another one of them fucking idiots. And the dude, we saw your tweets about Pavel Durov, and we'd really like to get your point of view. I'm like, why? So, you know, at the time it was a little weird. I told, you know, some people, I was like, I don't know, I'm just going to ignore this shit because I've seen this movie before, right? Because, my God, I've seen it a lot of times, trust me. You know, I get the DM from somebody and it's like, no. And so this one I ignored, and the motherfucker shows up in a 277 page fucking affidavit, and then a 32 page indictment, and like, oh. But anyway, so that was just my little sort of like, wow, that was fucking weird. But overall, I mean, listen, I said, and I apologize, Heidi. Heidi asked me for an official quote.
I actually loved it. It was perfect. It was exactly how I felt.
And I went, it was literally meh. It's a start.
Yeah.
Because I am eternally cynical, especially when it comes to our ability to enforce the law or anything like that. But the work was actually good. The affidavit from the FBI was fucking good, man. It was very thorough.
Yeah.
And you know, the indictment to seize a whole bunch of domains that the Russians were about to use to, you know, hoodwink Americans, you know, also solid. At the same time, you know, I'm looking around like, there's Mike Flynn, there's Tucker Carlson, you know, they're like, these motherfuckers are all over the place.
Oh, they're doubling down too. They're doubling down.
And they're freaking out, right? And you can see that they're freaking out. The only thing that, you know, I'm concerned about is like, do you really need to have an insider somehow leaking internal Russian communications, right? Because that's the only way we got some of the information we got. And it was fascinating and scary to hear them, as Heidi had said before, to hear them talk plainly and openly about what they know about us versus what they want us to believe. They just say it out loud. What we want to do is make white people afraid of immigrants taking their jobs. We know that the economy is strong, but we need to terrify them about something. What can it be? Well, let's use racism because that's what we always do. And it's just plain as day. The issue is you're not going to have that in 99.9% of the cases. But you can just see these people doing precisely the same shit, and much worse in many cases than the ones that they, you know, identified. And last thing, because I have to be this guy, they wrote down in this document that Tim Pool and Dave Rubin and Benny Johnson, the other dumb fuck, and Lauren Southern, didn't know. They were unwitting. How can we possibly know that the Russians were anywhere around? We're just regular old Americans, and just because we talk about Russia being amazing and America being a shithole, that doesn't mean anything. I mean, it's so it's a start, right?
Yeah.
But the good news is, look, I'm looking around and I'm watching the reaction, and everyone's just telling on themselves. The more people are freaking out, the more Russian they are. It's really very funny. And there's one other bit of cope that I just want to bring up since we're here, and then I'll shut up. Nick Fuentes, Nazi Nick Fuentes, went on a fucking rant about how Donald Trump admitted to losing the election. And he's done it a couple times. He said, I just lost by a whisker. And Nick Fuentes, like, was breaking down, not crying exactly. He's like, I'm not whining. Like literally, I'm not whining. But if they didn't steal it, why did we go to January 6th? Why are 1,600 people in prison? Well, because you're a fucking dumb Nazi. That's why. and you know, honestly, like it's sort of amazing to watch, you know, as various weird parts of this coalition, some of them aren't shattering off, right? Nick Fuentes is not going to go vote for Kamala Harris or anything, but to watch the facade of some kind of dude fearsome MAGA get kind of shattered into these weird fucking pieces of garbage that are just kind of, you know, floating around out there. You know, it's a magical sight. You know, we got a long way to go, but there's real damage being done to the bad guys. And, you know, it basically in the last 2 months, we just went on offense. As soon as Joe Biden decided, hey, I'm making this move, it's like the whole thing has gone on offense, and you know, it's good to see that there's actual movement in the Justice Department to recognize this, if nothing else. You know, I think they're probably all scrambling to say, oh shit, we didn't do anything about this for 4 fucking years, and you know, we better audition for next one because she's gonna win. You know, so. Anyway,
can you guys hear me okay? Because my reception's really sketchy.
Is that good?
You're a little echoey.
Should I dump it? Should I dump out?
You seem good to me.
Well, you guys can hear me now?
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. It's all sketchy. It's all sketchy on my end. So what I wanted to say, a couple of things. One is the 277-page affidavit that Jim is referring to deals with the seizure of 32 doppelganger cyber squatting sites that were being used to mimic real news sites, seeded with Russian narratives, the usual bullshit about, you know, Russia great, Ukraine bad, you know, and every wedge issue they could come up with in America. What Jim was referring to is there's a dossier within that affidavit that we got our hands on, translated from Russia, which shows the notes that were taken at meetings allegedly with Vladimir Putin, who oversaw this doppelganger campaign, this doppelganger operation. And as I wrote earlier today in my nuclear psychoses piece, they know us better than we know ourselves. And when they are really talking to each other and not creating that alternate world they want people to live in and force people to live in that lying world, they have a really accurate sense of us. And I found it very sad. Like I was reading a psychological profile of a loved one, realizing that the enemy knew my loved one's vulnerabilities. And it was something I think a lot of people would experience if they read it. But the thing that really stuck out with me was a page toward the end where they were like, look, the Biden economy is really good. He's feeding the rednecks who would normally be Trump supporters. So we're going to have to look for a proxy war. And they throw around a few different countries. Venezuela, no, that won't work. You know, maybe with Mexico, that won't really work. And so what we allowed to happen, though, was the psychological denial of our own success. The real world implications of this is that Americans were not celebrating the success of somebody that I believe is truly a great president. And so I bring that up because it's like one indictment, 32 domains, nobody's out of the woods. And a couple other things I want to say is just to refine what you were saying. The people that we mentioned were paid through people who knowingly were taking money from the Russians. As Jim was saying, I saw red when I realized how much money these people are making, the millions of dollars, the $100,000 bonuses to do this work. So if they're not asking where that money's coming from when all they're doing is Russian propaganda super spreading all fucking day long, then as Hi-Fi said, that's like Trump not caring where the cash where the cash comes from when people are buying his condos. So I just wanted to make that clarification. One more item from me, guys. As you know, I always bring up the Alexander Ionov indictment. Ionov was the Charlie Kirk of Russia. He was the head of the Communist Youth Organization. He got indicted in 2022 for paying Americans to corrupt U.S. elections. Those Americans that were involved in this, fifth string players, as my friend Wes Clark Jr. just said when we were chatting about this, they too denied having anything to do or knowledge of who actually was paying them and what their motivations might have been. They were being paid little shit sums of money, 500 here, 3,000 to maybe travel and rabble rouse, go protest somewhere. But a year later, a year after their Kremlin cutout was indicted, they too have been indicted. So last year, these people were also indicted. And I bring that up because I see direct parallels on how this is playing out. And Jim said something very important when I reported on the Ionov indictment in 2022. He said, but Heidi, there's like thousands of them. This is just fucking one of them. And I think what we saw yesterday was a move to start going after these people. And I already have friends taking the over-under on who's next.
I mean, my biggest problem has been that we have not identified the enemy. You cannot fight a war, physical or psychological, if you don't know who the goddamn enemy is. And this enemy is very good at concealing itself. And so, what the important part for me, in terms of trying to fight this, is it gives some air cover, right? It's like the government is showing you how this works, to the point of psychology, as I've been reporting for a long time now, it's all psychological warfare, or at a minimum, you can look at it as psychological warfare almost entirely. And what you saw in these documents was psychological warfare. They were talking about psychological reaction test groups. They had heuristics and algorithms for how you would radicalize people into, these belief systems. And it was all very sort of obvious, laid out, and clear as day. They're just running psyops on Americans. What's important, one of the things that's important, is that we see this and we understand it's not just about the money, right? The money is just the crime. The actual crime that should be the crime is brainwashing people, is repetitively lying to someone so many times that it becomes their reality. That's just wrong. Like, it's just, you metaphysically know that it's a crime.
Yeah, can you guys hear me? I'm having nothing but tech problems.
You're fine, Heidi.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just did what you just were saying, Jim, the Russians in the affidavit. Okay, sorry, bro. What the Russians called it in the affidavit in their dossier was targeted social engineering.
Yes.
And I bring that up because I am doing my own tests. Go ahead.
I was just going to say there's two. There's a specific thing called targeted social engineering that's aimed at individuals, active measures. It's the sort of thing that they've been running on me and us for a long time, which is to find actual human beings to interface with others, to infiltrate them, to try and tear them away from their friends, to reduce their support, all of those sorts of things. That's the social engineering part, right? But there is also the overall information warfare, which affects people's psychology in extremely negative ways.
Can I just say something? Hold on,
sure.
Heidi. We're talking about the crime of brainwashing people. I would posit that there's more crime than just that. I believe that there are murders attributable to these people, that the children who were murdered by their parents because of QAnon, those fall squarely upon the people who are running these operations. The school shooter.
Well,
We just had another school shooter. What did they find? They find him on Discord in some server. And what username does he have? Adam Lanza, but in Russian. I mean, we've been talking about this for years and we haven't seen action on
how
it.
many?
When? Is this the start? I hope so.
I just want to bring up, how many hundreds of thousands of people did we lose to the brainwashing from the anti-vax movement, which was a coordinated campaign going way back as part of Russian interference, along with the domestic useful idiots? So yes, radicalization, but there's also the anti-science component that resulted in the loss of a lot of lives. Jim, I want to bring up something that you mentioned, because it's very interesting that Big Brother is watching. In the affidavit, it showed that this particular campaign was paying very close attention to 2,800 journalists, politicians, think tank people. Oh, you can go down the list of Botnick soup, the types of categories that they were in. But they were also paying attention to a couple thousand of what they call anti-influencers. And the anti-influencers were the people that were not putting out the pro-Kremlin dialogue. And one of the things that they documented as a problem were a number of news outlets that were on to these doppelganger sites, these cyber squatting sites. And one of them was Byline Times, and they used a piece of Zarina Zabrisky's reporting. So shout out to my people for doing the work that investigative reporters are supposed to do.
Yeah. I mean, they should be mad at Zarina because she's exposing the worst part of their crimes to the world at her own peril. If people missed it, Zarina, and just to and thank you for bringing that up, to orient us about the monsters that we're fucking fighting here. Zarina is in Kherson, and the Russians have taken to, in dozens now at a time, attacking civilians, random civilians on the street, children, old people, people with their groceries, like people they don't, that maybe they identified who were driving a car, and they show videos of these people getting killed first person, and they laugh about it. The Russians do. And in the meantime, Zarina is on the ground with these people. And as you can imagine, it's like fucking Terminator, but real. And kids are getting their heads blown off and stuff because these fucking drones that cost a couple $100 are getting sent, over the Dnipro to Kherson. And it's a sobering, reminder that there is a reason the Russians don't like Zarina or Byline or me or Heidi or Hi-Fi, and
they hate me.
Yes, and it's actually true that they go after people, and you can it's nice to see these sort of outlines of this beast finally, coming to light. But boy, howdy, is there a lot more to go. Boy, howdy.
A lot more to go. And
But
then
hey,
it's going to be
yeah,
even
just
longer.
Yeah, and I used to believe all was in the mob roll-up. I always believed it. I always used to post a picture from a great film. I was, a criminal in a chain gang, an old like a pre-code movie, and where a friend of mine had put all the heads of all the people we write about, people from My American Monsters series. And mob roll-ups do work like this. This is what people like Robert Mueller were expert at doing, is you start with somebody like the coffee boy and you move your way up. Well, all the people that we write about are still out there doing, Russian propaganda under the guise of being patriots, and they're still a huge national security risk to the upcoming election and likely beyond. And I would like to bring up something that I'd love your comments on, because I often go back to things that I've written about pieces I found like in Russian journals like a decade ago. And I wrote a piece yesterday called, What's the Frequency, Oleg? And Oleg was a middle manager at the Internet Research Agency in St. Petersburg. And according to a former St. Petersburg troll, he said, imagine a man with a huge beer gut in an untucked denim shirt, walks around, dangles car keys on his finger like a taxi driver, and tells you, if a man can write, he'll write about anything. And I don't know why, but in all the reporting in all these years, that image of this fucking middle manager with the beer gut and the keys saying, if you can write about anything, it, to me, like, it always just makes me think that part of the root of everything is this horrible nihilism. And these people in Russia, maybe some of them really had to take the money. They were making more than like town mayors, and they talk about pensioners who also worked in this St. Petersburg troll farm. But I just feel like in America, like, you have a choice to say, I'm not going to fucking do that, because what these people are, witting or unwitting, are traitors to our country, to our way of life. And they have psychologically altered the minds of people to be against their own democracies and to not cherish their own democracies. And I think Hi-Fi said it earlier, treason pays, but at what price? They know what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. And for me, losing loved one after loved one to these Russian narratives, and the fact that these loved ones do not know that they're also super spreaders of Russian propaganda, is it's a tragedy.
Speaking of tragedy, can we talk about, just real quick, can we talk about the fact that Mr. J.D. Vance, right? And we all know who J.D. Vance is a product of.
I'm still a piece of garbage.
It's not. It doesn't count when you do it on yourself. It doesn't.
I know.
I like it.
Anyway, what J.D. Vance said today was completely. I know that was important. What J.D. Vance said today was,
strikes, bro. That's all I'm saying.
What J.D. Vance said today was that school shootings are a fact of life. I would just like to remind our audience that Georgia Governor Brian Kemp said at the press conference for the shooting that now is not the time to discuss policy. We need more thoughts and prayers. Once again, the same playbook is being used against us, and our children continue to die. I still got kids in school. I'm done with this. And I hope every single person listening to this is too. It's time, man. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if it's background checks, red flag laws. Honestly, personally, I still think it's regulating bullets because there's nothing in the Constitution about bullets. But whatever needs to be done, the blood needs to stop flowing in this country. That's all.
Let me give a slightly more radical proposal. Every fucking gun that is not in a well-regulated militia should be melted down into playground equipment. That is my very simple fucking proposal. Listen, forgetting about the constitutional ridiculousness of all of it. The Russians infiltrated the NRA, which was actually pretty reasonable gun safety for a long time. They really were. They were like, they were like, no, we don't want any fucking crazy machine guns. That's stupid. We just want to kill deers. It was like they were fine. And they got infiltrated by the fucking Russian mafia. And it's gotten progressively worse. There's money laundering. They're setting up shit in weird fucking states. Like, you remember they went bankrupt and they didn't, and they're still around and all this fucking shit. And then Maria Butina is like, has pictures with everybody, all of them, all the NRA people, not to mention all the fucking homosexuals in Congress and all the rest of it.
She was a real pro.
The NRA fucking is not completely, but almost entirely responsible for pumping 400 million firearms into America. Now, I'm going to tell people one fucking thing. If the founders found out that there were going to be 400 fucking million weapons in America, more than one per person, they'd be like, what the fuck happened to you people? What's wrong with you? What don't you understand about in order to have a well-regulated militia? It's the first phrase on purpose, because all the rest of it is after that. And guess what? We have a well-regulated militia. It's called the National Guard. That's literally what it was for. It was like, oh shit, we have to have one of those well-regulated militias. Okay, let's do the National Guard. And Bob's your uncle, we fucking have it. And they kind of let the guns go out in the fucking prairies or whatever because you needed them for bears and shit or what, you had all kinds of stuff to deal with. I'm sorry, we don't need any of that shit anymore. It is 2024. We're supposed to have flying cars right now instead of whatever the fuck is going on out there with these homosexual sick fucks who would rather do it with their guns than a person, because they've been literally trained that they can replace all of their little grievances with the capacity to kill other people. The problem then becomes, now we have 400 fucking million firearms in America that have been aided and abetted by our foreign adversaries. And then these motherfuckers, the foreign adversaries, come and start radicalizing our people to want to use them against each other. It is a long game that is a cooperative deal between the hard right in America, the evangelical right, and the fucking Russian government to come together in the project to eliminate American democracy. And how do you do that? You cause chaos. You cannot, as Abraham Lincoln said, no foreign enemy can take over America. We will commit suicide. He said that in 1838, well before the Civil War. He knew. And so my proposal is very fucking simple. We need to take this moment in history, understand what's happened to us, how hard we've been jacked around by our enemies, and start to make some real change to fix it, which includes these fucking gun laws and obviously women's rights and fixing the goddamn Supreme Court, which may make all of this moot anyway because they're just going to throw the election to Trump, but that's a whole different story.
Right.
Sorry, that was a very impassioned rant.
Since Mr. Vance says that school shootings are a fact of life, I would like to offer the following facts. These are data points. Make of them what you will. In the United States last year, there were 288 school shootings. In Canada, there were 2. In the UK, there were 2. In Japan, there were 0. In France, there were 0. In Italy, there were 0. In Germany, I believe there was 2.
So, gee, I wonder if the gun laws might have something to do with that,
We have that many in a day. Or a week, maybe. I don't, oh, fuck, man.
Speaking about concern for children, we did an incredible interview that we dropped today with somebody who wrote a book called The Privatization, Professor Josh Cowen. Before we cue that up, though, I just always tell you guys about the books that I'm reading, and I wanted to tell you about The Gravediggers. It's the last winter of the Weimar Republic. And basically, the ambassador to Berlin in 1932 is like sending memos saying that, Hitler is the greatest showman since P.T. Barnum, which just like echoed loudly in my head. But also, you've got these guys who are willing to do deals with these people that they know are fucking rattlesnakes who have paramilitaries attached to them. So I just bring that up because it's 1938. This was in 32. But it is the late 30s in Germany, in America, and we still don't know how the story ends because the people who committed the crime against America in the 2016 election attack also fucked with the 2020 elections. Some of them go back to prior elections. They're still doing it. And while I'm very grateful for the activity of the last 24 hours, and I anticipate much more to come, we need to deal with our domestic enemies. And I think, Jim, you tweeted that Elon Musk is an immediate national emergency. Like he is an immediate emergency to our country right now.
Yes. And hat tip to our friend Insider Films for this nickname. Adam Waffen Elmo is absolutely a fucking national security emergency. It is hard to imagine how absurd it is that this literal 4chan troll, like he's got 200 million followers that he has intentionally glued to himself. And he yesterday retweeted a Holocaust denier who was on Tucker Carlson, a guy who's literally giving the good points about Hitler and saying, Churchill was really the bad guy here, and just crazy Nazi shit. And Elmo's like, oh, worth a watch. Anyway, so I've been going bonkers on this motherfucker, but he's very nervous for a lot of good reasons, honestly. And my concern is, he just tweeted tonight the scariest thing that I've ever seen, which is that he controls 2/3 of the satellites in orbit around the planet.
Yeah,
Does anyone understand how fucking insane that is? That crazy nonsense has control of 2/3 of the satellites in fucking orbit. That is a global security emergency. That's an existential emergency. When that guy can shut off communications all around the world, if he gets a brain fart from Mike Flynn or something, it's just like the implications are nuts. And we've seen that he will do it. Remember, he shut down communications to the Black Sea and to Crimea.
Right.
Because fucking Putin told him to. Putin was like, "Whoa, don't do it. It's going to cause World War III." And Elmo's like, "Well, okay." And he just shut him off. And how did he get that? How did he get those fucking satellites? From us. From defrauding the United States and her citizens. That's you and me. That $250 billion that he has is ours. And we should take it fucking back, frankly.
Right. And quite frankly, when you say he controls it all, really the way that he passes messages for Putin and the way that he supports the Russian propaganda super spreaders that we're talking about, and the way that he communicates with them, and the way that he actually supports the indicted quote unquote media company Tenet is something that bears great scrutiny. So back to the fact that we actually all have children and all care about them. We interviewed somebody today brave enough to take on the privateers, and those are the billionaires who are trying to destroy public education through the school vouchers. And why don't we have Professor Josh Cowen speak a bit on that, because it's really important. This is what David Pepper has been screaming about for years. And I think it's as important to understand what this actually really means as it is many of these words we get lost under vouchers, gerrymandering, whatever. We're here to break it down for you. We'll have Professor Cowen break it down for you.
Never been about helping kids and families. It's part of this larger right-wing billionaire effort to privatize education in general, and particularly more recently to lean heavily into Christian nationalism as the motivating force. So to sum that up, over the last decade, as vouchers have had some of the worst academic results we've ever seen in the history of education research, billionaires on the right have turned increasingly to culture wars and to Christian nationalism to make the case for voucher systems. And that's why we're seeing so many of them spread today.
They want us
class war.
Dumb. They want us dumb, and Elmo's been going crazy about his free speech bullshit, right? It's the same idea as these vouchers and the homeschools and bullshit. What they want is to be able to control the information of people. Elon Musk doesn't give a shit about anybody's free speech but his. All he cares about is being able to do what he's doing, which is to artificially and illegally influence a presidential election. And it's the same goddamn thing right here. Just saying.
Absolutely. And let's hear a couple more things from him since we're running out of time. We've got a couple other clips. It's absolutely right.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you tracked the donors to the organizations, to the people, pushing the vouchers and the fake studies around voucher benefits?
Well, it's important. I mean, so I'm glad you mentioned Professor McLean. So her work by the journalist Ann Nelson, work by the journalist Jane Mayer, are all work by the journalist Catherine Stewart, are all writers whose work I draw on and kind of pull together in the Privateers. One way to think of my book as kind of the education specific, the voucher specific story for the larger story that those great writers are trying to tell. But one decision that I made early on in the book, in the research for the book, was to rely exclusively, with just a couple of exceptions, rely on publicly available documents. So IRS 990s, campaign finance reports, a lot of great press. And then as a professor, you know, I talk about my own sort of role in working as a young scholar 20 years ago on some of these pro-voucher studies, and how those things get assembled and by whom. And so Heritage is a big player in that space. The American Federation for Children, which is Betsy DeVos's think tank, is a big player in that space. And all of these groups are connected through, you mentioned the Council for National Policy. This is a right-wing kind of network of politics and policy. To quote Dick DeVos, Betsy DeVos's partner, you're connecting the donors with the doers through the group, the Council for National Policy. And so this is how it gets done. And what I point out in the book is that not every voucher study out there done by all of these people is necessarily wrong, or is necessarily, they're not necessarily cooking data. But what's happening is a case is assembled over time, very much the way that a political campaign war rooms against an opponent candidate. And so what's happening here is you can't blatantly put false statements on television. The FEC has something to say about that. But what happens is very much like negative campaigning against public schools, against critics of voucher programs. And that's how the case gets assembled by these folks over time.
Assembled by these folks over time.
He's so fucking great.
It's the use of information to alter reality, to make people think things. And that's the thing. If you think things, they're going to happen. Reality is going to alter that direction.
So he mentioned Dick DeVos and Betsy DeVos, who is Eric Prince's sister, as we all know. Dick DeVos created the Amway cult. So that'll give you a good sense for that motherfucker. Eric Prince and Betsy DeVos's parents, both of them, were presidents of the Council for National Policy that we were talking about before. It's all the same fucking beast. And remember, this woman who comes from the craziest, most Russian fucking hard right on earth, who comes from Eric Prince's family, that's who wants to be deciding our education, and in fact was in charge of deciding our kids' education for 4 fucking years, because everything is insane. Right?
Yeah.
Imagine, like, the idea that the Amway CNP Eric Prince lady,
yeah,
right, comes from literal Nazi blood. Like,
well, I think we should just
is going to be the one to make sure that our kids don't get a decent education, but instead have to go to some weird ass voucher school or be homeschooled into, whatever.
a cult. So it's really interesting, because do you remember when we talked about how when the Russians came into cities in Ukraine, they actually made people believe things were so terrible and that they would save it? It's like this. They're making us believe that these institutions that we've had that have supported and educated our children, my children, preparing them for college, are somehow terrible and evil and failing. And it's fucking bullshit. And you know what? I think we should just go to clip 4 and just go right to the belly of the beast and put a punctuation mark on Jim's comment. We can do 3, but clip 4 is the one that really backs up what Jim just said.
That is, CNN reported in late May these staggering numbers that Betsy DeVos's own organization, called the American Federation for Children, sort of an odd name, but they have spent $250 million, according to their own accounting, on bringing vouchers to the states since 2013. $250 million. And for that, they've gotten back $25 billion. Again, this is all their own numbers. This is CNN got a hold of an investor deck. So $25 billion in exchange for that 250 in spending. That means that for every $1 DeVos organizations have put into privatizing education, they've gotten $100 back in public spending for private education.
My final question is very simple. It's simply a yes or no answer. One of the things we talk about on this show, and one of the things I try to get our audience to understand, is currently we are experiencing a class war in which billionaires and their lackeys are doing everything they can to dismantle the administrative state that created the middle class, helps out the lower class, and tries to bring things into a more equal and just society. Would you agree that the school vouchers are part of the class warfare that we are experiencing today? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
So you heard those numbers before Hi-Fi got into the class war part, because that was important. You heard that it's functioning like some fucking Ponzi scheme, right? For every buck they put in, they're getting 100 out.
I would just like to point something out, though, because a lot of people take this out. A lot of people say, oh, they're just doing it for the money. And it's not about the money. The money gets them power. But if it was about the money, Elon Musk spent $44 billion of assorted Russian, Saudi, right-wing American, whatever money to buy Twitter. And now Twitter is only worth, if 71% of the market value is gone, $12.76 billion. That's more than they made on their education scheme. You know, so you got to keep in mind, it's not just the money. There's more to it.
No. It being able to change the presidential election is worth trillions of dollars.
Yeah, right.
Trillions.
Right.
Like the entire world economy will change based on the outcome of this election forever.
Right.
This is really important. Like, if America goes here, I'm not saying the entire world's going to go into a big Nazi fascist shithole, but a lot of it is. It will be very bad. It will be very, very rapid. So, we absolutely are facing, that sort of catastrophe if we fuck this up.
Well, yeah, so I'm so glad. The book is The Privateers. You guys can pre-order it now. It's out next week. He's a Michigan State professor. He was so smart and so kind. And I'm so grateful that somebody's doing this work, because this is not easy work to do. And it's also not sexy work, but it is the work that matters the most to the future of our country, because we're talking about our kids and their education. And I don't usually see the chat, but I'm having all these tech difficulties today. So I just shrunk my screen and I just get to see some of the comments. And I want to thank everybody here. Thank everybody who supports us. There's no Russian billionaires sending us millions of dollars and underwriting this. So we are grateful for every $5 Patreon from you all and every little tip that we get, because this is what we actually wish to be doing at this very delicate, fragile moment in time, is exactly the work that we've been doing. One more plug for our friend, Dr. Nafiz Ahmed. He's an investigative reporter at Byline. He does a bunch of amazing stuff, but we have an interview with him coming up, and you can pre-order his book or certainly get on a list to find out when it's available. It's called The Alt-Reich, and it's coming out in October, and it is really amazing. So we have a lot of cool stuff that we're doing.
I'm telling you, I'm not just being. I'm not the sales guy. Watch that shit. That dude knows his shit in a way that honestly, I haven't heard anybody else quite get it in the way that he does. I genuinely recommend it, and Hi-Fi wants credit for it because it was his idea. So
for 18 months. Nafis has been busy, but we're so grateful. And it was really nice because he also reads the work of my colleague, Jim Stewartson here. And that was a really nice moment to share. That was cool. That was cool. Anything else, gentlemen? It was a big week, lots to do. I feel really adrenalized to continue reading new indictments as they come. And, pulling late nights, reading footnotes and exhibits, because that's where the shit is, right in the footnotes and the exhibits.
Well, you can also find it in books. Here's one more clip from the professor.
Oh. Reporting on Project 2025. Yeah. And I would love for you to help clue our audience into how this kind of comes out of the same soup.
Yeah, I was just finishing the manuscript for the Privateers when Project 2025 was rolled out by the Heritage Foundation. Heritage makes a number of appearances in my book. So Project 2025 is this right-wing blueprint for a new Trump presidency. And vouchers, school vouchers, are two of the first three paragraphs in the education chapter for Project 2025. The whole centerpiece, all of the other things they have to say about education, destroying the U.S. Department of Ed, which oversees anti-discrimination programs, for example, fighting back what they call a gender ideology or woke schools, critical race theory, all of these things. All of that sort of centers around the idea that we're going to take public dollars and move it into private schools. But to do that, you have to, in the words of sort of the right-wing influencer Christopher Rufo, you have to create undermine public confidence in public schools. And that's what the idea here is, both behind Project 2025 in its education form, and then also the voucher push in general. So very, very important to know that school vouchers are the centerpiece of Project 2025's education agenda.
Christopher Rufo.
Christopher Rufo.
Christopher Rufo is a shit weasel that is almost single-handedly destroying Florida with his horrible psyops. Yeah. And I say psyops because he admits it. He says, what I do is to psychologically fool people to, he uses, slightly off from, I'm psyoping these fucking dipshits, but it's pretty close. He admits it's all fake. It's bullshit. What came from him? Groomers? Oh, Disney's a bunch of groomers. What the fuck are you talking about? It's Disney.
Moms for Liberty.
You're gonna make Disney into groomers? What the fuck? Well, there are political reasons for that. There's generating hate. There's all the obvious reasons. DEI, the whole CRT thing. That was that motherfucker too. DEI. There's a whole bunch of these things come out of this operation called the Manhattan Institute. And I'm not going to get into the history of the Manhattan Institute, but that fucking thing, by the way, we'll get into it a little bit if you watch the next episode. The Manhattan Institute has been a Russian-aligned, thank you, Russian-aligned propaganda, right-wing, Christian nationalist, racist organization for a very long time. And the tie back around is this guy named Charles Murray, who was on the same debate. He was in a debate with two other people I can't remember on the left. On his side was Peter Thiel, and they were arguing that colored people are too dumb to go to college. They were pro don't send people in inner cities, the urbans to college because they're too dumb. And that was.
I'm still a piece of garbage.
That's how you fucking do it. That's how you do it. See? Balls and strikes, baby. Balls and strikes. 10 and 10. I love that one. That was good. Anyway, Peter Thiel is the Antichrist, and I hope nothing terrible happens to him.
That reminds me.
I don't think any of us are safe until these guys are behind bars. Yeah. Yes, High Fidelity. I think we're at our hour, so I think you want to have the final thought.
Final thoughts here. All right, it's going to be a bit
deep thoughts with High Fidelity.
Oh boy,
deep thoughts.
Don't interrupt. Let me go. All right. If I was Donald Trump, and these indictments come closer and closer to him, I would be worried for my life, because there's a lot of Russian window cancer going around, if you know what I'm saying.
And that was
if you're an old viewer,
Fidelity.
If you're an old viewer, you already know where I'm at when it comes to class warfare and billionaires. If you're a new viewer, the world is under attack by oligarchs and organized crime, and they're doing everything in their power to take over our country, take over the world, destroy reality. If you're one of our haters who are out there watching and running your mouths, just know that I'm coming for the billionaires. We're coming for the billionaires, and we don't even care about you. Go get a job. That's the final word.